and welcome to a brand new episode of Trashtalk on Attack Vector Tactical, a show where I talk about the various ships and vessels you will be commanding in a game of Attack Vector Tactical. In today's episode, Lafayette Class Patrol Cruiser. Olympia has carefully husbanded the slowly dwindling fleet of Earth-built ships it inherited from the nation's fedaries through a careful program of mothballing and cannibalization for spare parts. The 4 Lafayette-class cruisers in service are the last of their line, and at current service rates the last of these will be forced to retire sometime in the 2280s. Most analysts expect them to be replaced by the Lafayette-class command cruisers. As the Lafayette class has returned to service from mothballs, the ODFSA has replaced components with ones that fit the Olympian standards, in particular, replacing the Zintjern 1600 nm lasers with the shorter ranged but higher output Vinterbell 2400 nm series. However, this is controversial in the ODFSA, where some Olympian analysts argue that the Lafayette class, which are fundamentally fleet combatants, cannot properly replace the Lafayette class, which was designed for independent patrolling, a mission currently held by vessels in the 5,000-ton range. In order to accomplish these independent patrol operations, the class boasts a 34-week cruise endurance, although they can carry neither gunboats nor pods of supplies or fuel. The forward battery mixes 1200 nm lasers for medium-range combat with 2400 nm mounts that vastly increase the Lafayette's firepower as the range closes. Weighing 6,975 tons, 1,500 more than the Kennett, the Lafayette is a cruiser, a ship class weighing around the 7,500-ton range. Ship of this weight range is generally slower, relying more on their armor and armament to pave the way. 1G acceleration from its ESA-21 fusion torch provides a decent 4 max thrust that can increase to 4.5 at half fuel, and its 18.98 tactical delta V, or the equivalent of 121 units of fuel, provides an impressive thrust endurance during a battle. For power, its triple Energia 6 reactors yet again, generating 187.5 MW or 3 powers per segment, and 17 Voskempf heat sinks will let the vessel run at max power for 5.66 turns, or around 724 seconds, 128 per turn. My previous calculation was wrong, though one can run the ship at full power for the last turn, as the consequence of doing so won't happen until the end of it. To store all this power, the onboard 16 Zinkel A1 sodium batteries can store 32 gigajoules of it at once, a large capacity that will be quite needed as the reactor won't be able to sustain the hard-hitting armaments of the Lafay for long. The Lafayette class is not without weaknesses, exacerbated by the Olympian refit. The peak damage ranges of its laser suite are completely detached. The Bull system's coil guns may be insufficient to provide maneuver constraint against enemies in the Lafayette class's mass range. While an Alpha strike by its entire laser battery will not quite drain its batteries, the reactor complement is narrowly insufficient to recharge the batteries inside the laser's cooling time. A lack of missile capacity prohibits early engagement saturation, forcing the Lafayette class to surrender tempo early. While somewhat short on firepower for their rate, the heat sink capacity permits them to fight the extended engagement for which their armoring is intended. Fitting for a ship class this heavy, the Lafay has an onboard armament of 4 Vinterbell 2.49 m lasers, 2 Tenako 3.1 m lasers, 2 Tenako 2.5 m lasers, another 2 Bull Systems Mark 5-2-4 coil guns, and 6 Pike Wall Zone Defense laser systems for zone defense. This translates to 4 Class 3 Short-Range Laser System or SRLS, 2 Class 3 MRLS, 2 Class 2, another 2 Class 2 50 kg coil gun, and 6 ZDLS. Let's start with the stars of the show first. The 4 Class 3 SRLS, as the name implied, are very short-ranged laser that will do tremendous amount of thermal damage in exchange for no range, long cooldown time, and high power consumption. Together, the 4 SRLS can deal a maximum of 104 under 5 hex, with an average of 80, and far less at any range further than that. This is a tremendous amount of damage, to say the least. Anything hit by this will feel it for the rest of its existence. The combined firing arc band is very generous in terms of size too. Getting 4 together will need the target directly in front of you, but you can in general get 3 SRLS on target as long as they are somewhere in your front. This is still a huge amount of damage. And now the problem. The SRLS array in total need 18 energy to fire, and can cool down in 6 segments. This doesn't sound too bad, as 3 power per segment means the Lafay can recover energy perfectly in time, but the Lafay has everything else too. The 2 Class 3 MRLS are mounted in the forward arc too. They are here to poke at frigate at range as it closes in and add more to the damage of the short-range barrage as things get into knife range, while the two Class 2, which can aim to the side, are here more for interception of missiles and gunboats. All of these can be combined to fire frontally for a combined total of 140 damage in exchange for a staggering 30 energy cost. Both you and your target will feel it for sure, even if it was in a very different manner. And then there's the coil guns. Mounted on the sides of the Lafayette that can aim in quite a wide arc are the two Class 2 50 kg coil gun. Class 2 stands for its muzzle velocity, a 16, which stands for how many hex it can travel per turn. Each hex is 20 km, so that would be around 2.5 km per second, and 50 kg is of course the weight of its round, of which it will fire 4 of for a total mass of 200. To give you a sense of scale, a 120 mm tank gun from an Abram can fire a 10 to 20 kg shell. This is before the weight of the propellant being added in, the fastest of which, such as kinetic penetrator, can travel around 1.8 km per second. The Class 2 50 kg coil gun, if fired between stationary ships, will do absolutely nothing for most ships because it will only do a puny 4 damage, but keyword, stationary. If your opponent is moving 2 hex per segment towards you, and you just fire a projectile at 2 hex per segment towards them, that projectile will now hit them with 4 hex per segment worth of kinetic energy, quadrupling the damage. Kinetic energy equals to half of mass times velocity squared. After all, this is essentially the basis of maneuver constraint in AVT. The most common way to do damage in AVT is making passes, flying besides your opponent quickly, dumb everything, and then do that again, and maneuver constraint is here to make that difficult. Go too fast with your opponent firing coil slugs at you, and your commander might suddenly find themselves face to face with a 50 kg metal slug. Even a simple increase of 4 to 7 damage suddenly means a lot of ships are now vulnerable frontally to these weak 50 kg seekers. Of course, if your opponent is moving away, then the Class 2 is useless, or rather, they already served their role as deterrent. But while the Class 2 cannot make up in power, it can make up in quantity. It costs only 1.5 energy to fire and has cooldown of every turn. With reactor providing 3 power per segment, your battery bar will literally not move even when firing both coil guns continuously, and with an internal magazine of 12 salvos plus another 48 from the drum, you don't really need to tell your damage control crew to put in more slugs from the cargo at all. And unlike laser system, coil gun can fire a wide variety of rounds, though they can be rare. You can only have a select amount of AP and frag rounds due to fleet logistics and politics, and shell improvements for 50 kg slugs are rather costly. But considering all the Lafayette can spend on are these things, you should always stock up on some hardened AP rounds for that special occasion, and frag rounds can be good too if you are expecting eggshells or using it for zone defense. There's one tiny problem with the coil gun however. For a weapon to fire, it has to open its armored aperture, essentially exposing itself and rendering its mount armor value to 0, and laser systems in AVT is accurate enough to mount snipe. While mount sniping another laser system is a pain because you have to predict when your opponent will fire, coil gun will fire continuously for multiple turns, giving you a rather wide window to catch onto. So while coil gun is a cheap way to get your opponent to dance to your whim, you might also find it rather short-lived if you used it at the wrong time. Using it when your opponent can't fire their laser is a good idea, but sometimes you just gotta risk it. Everything is a resource in AVT, and that includes your weapons. And finally, the Lafayette still has 6 ZDLS around. It's a decent array on its own, though a bit lacking around the rear, but combined with the Class 2 lasers and coil guns for long range and mass interception, the zone around the Lafayette is going to be well protected, which it will need, to move across the distance before sucker punching something with quad short range laser. The Lafayette class shows its power in its armor protection. While their skin armor is comparable to other cruisers, their internal armoring is impressive. 105 mm RHA protects all power systems and the internals of the primary weapon mounts, which are further protected by 350 mm RHA or more of external armor. This extensive armor makes the class essentially immune to targeted attacks on weapon mounts. The armor pattern was copied by Olympia for the Lafayette class command cruisers. Acceleration and maneuverability are additional strengths of the Lafayette class. Despite massing nearly 2,000 tons more than most frigates, its fusion torch still provides a full 1.0 g of thrust, while its hull shape and maneuver thrusters allow a pivot rate comparable to cylindrical frigates. Even without its zone defense capability, the Lafayette is tough from its armor alone. 9 at the tip, 7 around the nose, and even at its lowest, it's a 3 on the sides, and its internal provides even more armor at some critical locations. making the Laffy a very capable brick that can survive the charge to close range passes. Its rather high thrust for its weight class also helps out in this aspect, plus the abundance of fuel to burn. And while it shares the same pivot rate as the Kennet, the same pivot J-table, this is a more acceptable hammer lock value for it, as Laffy is indeed a much heavier ship with actual armor to boot. Its max thrust of 4 also shares the same acceleration increase as max thrust of 5 for the first 3 segments of burn 2, only when it gets to the 4th that things get different. But what does all this means when added up together with Laffy's armaments? Well, Laffy also has enough cargo capacity for a cruise endurance of 34 weeks, fulfilling the requirement for independent patrol, and that's exactly it. This is a role usually fulfilled by frigate, and now there's a cruiser capable of running around and bullying its smaller brethrens. It's fast enough to catch up to most frigate, with fuel for endurance chase, plus armor to outlast most of its opponent, as well as being capable of eating any maneuver constraint coming out of the Class 2 coil guns used by most frigates. This is the same for the Laffy using its Class 2 coil guns against other cruisers and heavier ships, but this doesn't matter if its primary opponents are lightly armored frigates. And in case its 2 massive drums aren't enough, you have a cargo slot, which stands for magazine stowage, that can store another 96 salvos. I also have to mention that I made a mistake in the previous episode for assuming that you can store munition in normal cargo slot, but that doesn't change the potential supply carrier role of the Kennet. Does this mean it's not as good against heavier opponent? No, it just means it's gonna fight differently. It's the fastest cruiser around, currently, and it has the armor to move and take initiative in ways other heavy capital vessels could not. Its armament might be light for something of its rate, but for Class 3 short-range laser is still a massive punch, and its armor, zone defense capability, and heat sink capacity will let it make it out of a long drawn-out fight better than any of its opponent could. And that's basically it on the Lafayette Class Patrol Cruiser. I still won't say it in French, a short-range laser brawler that's a complete brick wall to anything that tries to stop it. Anyway, that's all for now, and I will see you all next time. Hello there, if you like this video, please subscribe and click that notification bell button. If you want to see the videos early as well as further support my channel, you can join in my Patreon page, or buy me some coffee, links in the description. Anyway, have a nice day.